title of today's reading is called "The Law is Perfected in Love." Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 1, we read, "The law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ." Grace means the power to rise spiritually. Truth means the experience of divine realities, not the application in the outer world of that inner experience. Divine love is the soul's experience of oneness with God. Kindness is the human manifestation of that love. Grace is deeper than mere kindness. Wisdom is a divine experience. Justice to all is a human law, though divinely inspired. It follows as consequence of the experience of wisdom. Truth goes deeper than mere justice. While following the law, we should strive always to trace it back to the origins in the vision of God. Therefore, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita urges the devotee not to be satisfied with spiritual precepts alone, but to go beyond them to the direct inner experience of truth. In the 18th chapter of that great scripture, he says, "Nay, but once more, take my last word, my utmost meaning have. Precious thou art to me, right, well beloved. Listen, I tell you for thy comfort this. Give me thy heart, adore me, serve me, cling in faith and love and reverence to me. So shalt thou come to me, I promise true. For thou art sweet to me, and let go those rights and writ duties. Fly to me alone, make me thy single refuge. I will free thy soul from all its sins. Be of good cheer." Thus, through the Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Thank you, Anand. And again, welcome in the Temple of Light, Ananda Sisi. It's so wonderful to be able to reach out with this powerful Sunday service, the Festival of Light, also in a language outside that is understood in other European countries. We're doing our best to do more of this, so bear with us. It's our deep desire to reach out to you always with these teachings. So, this is, I think, one of the few readings where Swami gives like short aphorisms or definition. He says, for example, truth is the experience of divine reality, not the outward manifestation of it. So I was thinking, meditating upon this, and then a memory came back to me many, many years ago. I was very young. I'm still very young, of course, but we're always young in the eyes of God, but I was young in any case, maybe 22 or 23. I lived in Amsterdam and I wanted to start a meditation group. And I had no experience at all on how to start, but somehow by miracle, 2 people contacted me and they wanted to come. And the first one who came was a lady, and she had a very actually intuitive aura around her, nice, kind. But she sat down, and we were waiting then for the other man to come, and she started speaking to me about her inner experiences. So let's think again. Truth is the experience of divine realities, not the outward manifestation of it. she started to speak about it. She had visions of Christ, I think, and Babaji came to her and manifested in front of her, and it went on and on. And somehow, I don't know why, but I wasn't really interested. Something within me was not interested. I was just looking at her, and in the meantime, I don't think I had the impertinence to lack of respect to look at my watch, but I didn't do that. But then the other man came, the other person came, and he had, I had already met with him, and he had been to Ananda. I think he'd been in the village. I knew that he had known Swami Kriyananda, that he had a deep love for him, that he had Kriya, and that in the village he had told me they had worked with him, they had asked him to serve in the gardens to get some grounding. He was like a very delicate type of mind he had, but in his eyes there was something particular. So he came in, and immediately, so he sat down and we had a little chat, and the lady said to him, "Wow, you have those typical Kriya Yoga eyes. You have that fire of Kriya Yoga in your eyes." And when she said that, I immediately listened to her. So I was not listening to her when she was saying, visions here, visions there, and maybe levitation and all that kind of stuff. But when she simply saw something in this man, and it was so intuitive, and I recognized it immediately because there was something special in his eyes. And it was a Kriya Yoga look. If you ask me how to describe it, I wouldn't be able to. There was something there that just you could feel that he was a very sincere and very sensitive yogi. So there you had it. There in that intuition, when she saw this in the boy, in the man, there was a truth there. And it was an inner experience. It was a keen perception. But when she spoke, I thought later, about these experiences with me, and she was summing up and everything, she was talking about something that probably was just not between me and her, or between her and other people. It should have stayed between her and God. I've always loved this English saying that says, "Wisdom takes its own counsel." And that can be sort of put together, associated with another saying that is, "He is a fool who cannot hide his wisdom." But there is, I think, also an anatomical explanation for that. And then we're speaking about the yoga, the anatomy of yoga. So the throat chakra, the Visuddha chakra, is there for communication with other people. It's abstract, it is words. Like the second chakra is more like body language, also important, the language of our emotions and everything. But the throat chakra is, the quality of the throat chakra is calmness, it is also listening, it is speaking. And I had learned from someone who was a lady, an American lady, who was a real expert, I felt, in the chakras. And she said, the throat chakra can help you to heal wounds or traumas that may be there in the lower chakras, and that she could see as sort of either an open wound or scar tissue or whatever in the chakras. And she said, so if you have the ability to speak, if you have a trauma, for example, and you develop the ability to speak about it, not with everybody, obviously, but with people that you trust, some friends, or maybe a psychotherapist or a minister or whatever, that will diminish the power that that chakra, that trauma has over your energy. So this chakra, I can speak about it, I can express it with words, I can sort of add calmness to these fears or pain or whatever it is, and that diminishes its power. But then she added, if you speak about good experiences, inner experiences, spiritual experiences, the same happens. So that will also diminish their power over you. So Swami Kriyananda was always very, very discreet. He never spoke that much about, I don't think he ever spoke about his own meditations. The people who knew him better can tell that, but I don't think he did very much. He just did it and didn't speak about it. And also, I remember, I've shared this story before, but when I first met him in 1985, there was a celebration, maybe it was his birthday celebration, and someone had made, one of our devotees had prepared wonderful fireworks. So and it was, they were really works of art. So they were the chakras, and you could see like another fire that would symbolize the Kundalini. And we were all watching that in the evening hours. And I was standing next to Swami, and I wanted maybe to share how much an expert I was in Raja Yoga. Look, Swami, those are the chakras. And, Swami, that's the Kundalini. And that flame that you see, that must be the aura, and so on. And he's then, oh, really? Oh, yeah, chakras, yeah. And he was just not commenting any further. And then a few days later, I followed him everywhere in those days, and he was giving a talk in Rome at the house of Renata Arlini, who was the lady who had made sure that he would continue to come in Italy. We owe her a great debt of gratitude. And he was speaking, and then at a certain point in his talk, he said, and you know, chakras and aura and Kundalini and all that metaphysical stuff, we don't talk about those things so much. So maybe I got the point. I hope I got the point. So that is truth. It's an inner experience. And I think with everything that's going on in the world, the polarization and where you feel you have an opinion, and of course you want to that's only human, you want to vent your opinion or express your opinion, but it can never really be and encapsulate, comprehend the whole truth. It's just, it sort of breaks the truth into little parts, and that causes polarization. That's what causes real polarization, when you get attached to your opinions about things, to your own personal understanding of things. It's much better to trust whatever truth you feel in yourself and to go deep into that inner world, maybe even as deep as the causal plane, as Sri Yukteswar calls it, where you go very close to God, and then you don't need to say anything. Probably the closer you get to God, the lesser inclined you will be to say anything at all. But then your aura, your magnetism, will accomplish much more for you than your words could do, or your opinions. And that's what the world needs now. I think the world needs magnetism of people who really sincerely are looking for truth, not outside themselves, but through inner experience, through meditation, through yoga techniques, through devotion, and so on. Then the second one, he says, in this reading, he says, wisdom is a divine experience. And again, it goes again, an experience, an inner experience. Yoga is based on experience, not also experiment, but then the experience is what gives us faith. So wisdom is a divine experience. Justice to all is a human law, though divinely inspired. Truth goes deeper than mere justice. So there we go again, and it's not so easy. For example, so I live in this community, and it is a almost daily learning experience. Not at all easy to live in a community. Don't live in a community, it's too difficult. I don't mean to say that. What I mean to say is, through all the challenges that it gives to the ego, to our limited understanding of reality, we grow, and it's like you have, instead of the one mirror in the morning that you look into with relative pleasure, you have when you go out there, you have like 50 or 70 mirrors that mirror back to you what you're doing with your own energy. So I had an interview with Anand not so long ago, who is, together with Kirtani, spiritual director of not just Ananda Assisi, but Ananda Europe, and a dear friend to all of us. And we were talking about law, you might say, if I may change it a little bit, law and, you might say grace. So I said something in front of, I asked something, you hardly ever police, there's no policing in your way of being a leader. Meaning to say, there are certain rules may apply, certain rules may be necessary when you have a community, but I have never seen him enforce that with, from a position of power, even though officially he would hold that position. And so then he said, I'm sorry if I'm quoting you when you're sitting right next to me, but I hope it's okay.
It seems like it's going to probably be public.
You're going to correct me if it's not okay. Anyway, he said the most important thing in a community is first to foster a sense of family and spiritual family, deep connection between people, because then that will sort of stimulate people's goodwill, and then rules become less necessary. People will somehow always make it. Am I quoting you right? Okay. So the interview, by the way, will soon be published. It's a thorough, deep interview. It lasts about 50 minutes maybe, and so we'll soon publish it on the website, and you can watch it for yourself. In this case, this just struck me. You have law, and you have the law is perfected in love. So, as you know, that our first core principles are two. One is people are more important than things. So you work with people not only as they are, but also what they are in their deeper self. We help each other to be our best self, to develop ourself with capital letter, to have self-realization. And the other one is Yato Dharma, Tato Jaya. And so when you live then in a community and you just feel, for example, this is right and this is not right, and so you are in the relative realm dimension of human justice, then very often it may happen that you have to step back a little bit and look at the bigger picture. So what often, for example, happens is that we need to take into account, for example, individual needs. And then it's not so much he needs more money or she needs a house or whatever, but what does he or she need to grow spiritually? And there, when you look at that from that perspective, that, of course, will create, in the long run, a beautiful community. Because then people all are given space and position, if they need it, to rise to their own best self, to live in grace. And that just works better than any rules or impositions. It is also, I think, the type of community for the new age, where we work much more from individual experience, from personal development, and less from collective rules imposed with power. It reminds me also of an episode in the history of Education for Life, which is our educational system that we use, and that was founded many years ago by NAYASWAMI nitai. And he shared that, for example, when he worked with children, the classical school system says, okay, it starts from the program. So you need, by this age or by this grade, you need to know this many mathematical operations and so forth. And you need to have read these books and studied this part of history. And what he would do, many times, he would look at the child, and sometimes he would say, okay, this child needs to learn multiplication and adding and subtracting, but it was just very clear that it was not the right moment for the child to learn that. So he would look at her or him, at the child, and then see what can she learn now that comes from within, where there is some enthusiasm, and then he would work on that. But it was always in the back of his mind that, of course, you want to prepare children also for society. So you need to learn to have the basic skills of reading, writing, and mathematical skills, etc. But he would take time. He would just look at the child and see when it was the best time for him or her to start the program. And that is how it works also with us. There may be laws and rules that regulate society, but we can only be a valid contribution to society if we perceive wisdom within ourselves and then apply that law or live by that law, or sometimes not, depending on what our inner intuition says, intelligently. So the third part that I would like to touch upon regards Moses. So it sounds funny, but Moses is actually also a little bit part of our masters, because Master Yogananda himself said Moses was a great master. He said Moses raised the serpent in the desert, which is a metaphor of saying he had full Kundalini awakening. And he was much more, the Jewish people, although they were slaves of the Egyptians, and there you see again how position does not define spirituality, were much more developed spiritually than the Egyptians themselves. The Egyptian civilization had fallen into magic more, and the Jewish deeper tradition, the real tradition, was one God, one inner reference point that we can always take refuge in. That is real monotheism, not monotheism. Monotheistic is when you feel that there is always that calm center of awareness in your heart, in your spiritual eye, and that you can always, through daily training, and then when it gets difficult, you can always take refuge there. But the thing is, they had different, so if Moses was a great master, and if Jesus was a great master, it is wrong to think that this passage from John where he says, the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ, that this means that Jesus was better than Moses. That is old style thinking. If you flow with reality, you look at what people need, and you give that when you're a great master. And that is what Moses did. So his Jews, who had been living through very difficult years and maybe decades of slavery, they could not handle their sudden freedom, and they went through destructive behavior. They just lost it. And also in education for life, it is there is sometimes a necessity, it acknowledges the necessity of restrictions and punishment. It depends on the consciousness of the child. So if you have a very difficult child or a very difficult class of children, you may, in the beginning, an education for life teacher, so we're speaking about a yogi teacher, a teacher who is aware, who knows, and says, okay, I'm not going to get anywhere just with my own spiritual magnetism or by inspiring the children or by helping. No, right now they need laws, they need rules, and I need to have the courage and the power to enforce those rules. So that may be necessary sometimes, and of course then the real teacher always looks for possibilities to relax those rules, to not have too much physical containment. And then gradually from there you start growing and you need less and less of it, and you begin to discover the joy of truth for yourself. So in the case of Moses, he came then with these 10 commandments. And I think most of them are familiar with most of them. And they were rules on the one hand, but it depends also on how you take it. So there are 10 commandments, and then there are also 10 rules of yoga, basic rules of yoga. Yoga starts with yama and niyama, and there are 5 yamas and 5 niyamas. So the number is striking, right? There is a difference, however. Yama and niyama we practice not so much because it is enforced upon us from outside, imposed upon us from outside. We practice it because we recognize the principle behind it, and we practice it individually through introspection. Sometimes meditation groups also have a project. Let's work together for a month or 2 months on ahimsa or non-violence or devotion or studying or whatever. And that also is wonderful, but in the last analysis, yama and niyama are very individual. And you always need to get back, when you are a yogi, I think we need to get back to those principles until our last breath, because they are the foundations of everything that comes after that. So it is a little bit, you can also study Moses' 10 Commandments in a more yogic key and say, for example, honor thy parents, he says. Well, it is such, many people might say that is almost a commonplace. The relationship, I have such a complex relationship with my parents, I had a difficult childhood, whatever. Why should I honor my parents? But yoga, I don't like my parents. I didn't have good parents, or I had wonderful parents, whatever your specific relationship is or was. Or my mother was an alcoholic. Everything is possible. But honor thy parents. What does it mean then from a yogic point of view? Have the power of acceptance. Accept your parents as you are, as they are, and honor your own karmic choice. You chose those parents. So honor your own choice by accepting your parents exactly as they are or were. So we can even make those 10 commandments yogic. And then it says the law came through Moses, grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. We need both, I think. There are times when we need rules for ourselves, not so much, also a little bit for your community, your family, but it starts with ourselves. We need spiritual discipline, we need rules, and we need to be a little tough on ourselves sometimes. And then there are other moments where, but the real purpose is always only one, and that is to get to that perception of inner light, of inner love deep in your heart. So I would like to end by reading what Master Yogananda said about Moses and Jesus. And I would like to remind you that, or not remind you, but this is done, he's describing what happens on the Mount of Transfiguration, and where Jesus goes, I think with Peter and one of his other disciples, maybe, pardon?
John?
Maybe John and Peter, and he transfigures his body becomes light, and it's a very important moment, very powerful. And then the prophet Elijah and Moses come to him and they give him power. He needs some encouragement because of the crucifixion that awaits him. And Yogananda says, they come to him to give him the power to face the crucifixion and the ordeal without too much pain or trouble. So here then, Yogananda described why, well, Elijah was there because Yogananda said Elijah was Jesus' guru in a previous incarnation. And in this incarnation, Elijah was John the Baptist. And this transfiguration occurred after John the Baptist had been beheaded. And so that ordeal, Yogananda said, made him completely free. And so he came again to Jesus as Elijah to help him further. So I'd like to finish by reading this. Moses appeared with Jesus to show that both of them were inseparably connected in the spiritual path and had been connected in divine work in many incarnations. The modern Jews, therefore, should find and establish their brotherhood with Christians. Moses, the master of the Jews, and Jesus, the master of the Christians, having appeared together on the Mount of Transfiguration in divine glory, ought to be the inspiration of the Christian and Jewish people alike. Moses and Jesus, being present in heaven now, with grief, consciously watch the clannish differences that have arisen between the Jewish and the Christian children of God. Jesus Christ's body came from the Jewish race. The entire Jewish people are not to blame because a few wicked Jews were instruments in the crucifixion of Jesus. Jewish people should acknowledge the greatness of Moses because he appeared with Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. The united presence of Moses and Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration was a divine beacon light installed in the dark past by God, that it might shine through future ages to dissolve the dark differences of denominationalism which exist between his Jewish and Christian children. So in his tribute to Moses in the Whispers from Eternity, he also says that Moses still has a lot of followers, a lot of disciples. These are sacred things. They are hidden. But he says, O Moses, thou torchbearer of salvation, many soldier souls have set out to join thee in thy ceaseless march through the dark night of time. With thee they would fight the forces of gloom and ignorance. So let's become spiritual. Let's not be religious. Let's learn to flow with the needs of the time and with the needs of individual people. And let's try to live, to use whatever rules we have for ourselves only to deepen our perception of God's love in our own hearts. Thank you. Jai Guru.